Diane Cilento's tell-all book, which shocked the entertainment world, peeled back the layers of Sean Connery's enigmatic persona, revealing the depth and complexity of the man behind the iconic James Bond. For decades, Connery had been an object of fascination, his rugged masculinity and graceful composure capturing the public's imagination. However, Cilento's revelations gave the world an intimate portrait of a man whose life was filled with contradictions, ambition, and a burning desire to transcend his humble origins. Born Thomas Sean Connery in Edinburgh, Scotland, Connery's early life was marked by struggle and determination. Raised in a working-class neighborhood, his father worked multiple jobs as a factory laborer and truck driver, while his mother took on cleaning work to make ends meet. Even at a young age, Connery understood the realities of hard work. By 9 years old, he was delivering milk before school, and by 12, he had already surpassed his peers in both physical stature and responsibility. Standing well over 6 feet by his teenage years, he became known as Big Tam in his neighborhood, a moniker reflecting both his imposing size and his larger-than-life personality. Despite his early physical prowess, Connery's journey was not one of certainty. After being too young to serve in World War II, he enlisted in the Royal Navy at 16. Connery's time in the military gave him discipline, structure, and valuable life lessons, but it also led to a medical discharge after a painful duodenal ulcer developed, cutting short what could have been a long military career. Left without a clear path, Connery returned to Edinburgh, where he worked in various jobs, none of which seemed to offer any lasting satisfaction. He worked as a truck driver, lifeguard, coffin polisher, and even posed as a nude model for art classes, all while staying committed to his physical fitness. His hours in the gym and his participation in bodybuilding competitions began to attract attention, but Connery was not content to settle into a career as a bodybuilder. His love for football remained strong, but the realities of the sport's brief career span made Connery rethink his future. At 23, he was offered a contract to play football for Manchester United, a dream opportunity for many young men in Britain. However, Connery, with his pragmatic view of life, declined the offer. He recognized that a footballer's career was often short-lived and that his true calling might lie elsewhere. Choosing the uncertain world of acting, Connery set out on a path that would eventually see him become one of the world's most famous and beloved stars. Acting, however, was not a natural choice for Connery. He had no formal training, and his entry into the world of theater came purely by chance. A fellow bodybuilder informed him about an open audition for a touring production of South Pacific. Connery decided to give it a try and landed a small role as a chorus boy. Though his experience was limited, Connery's natural charisma and strong work ethic quickly propelled him forward in the industry. Over time, he developed not only a passion for acting, but also the skills that would eventually make him a household name. During this period of self-discovery, Connery also experienced a deep and passionate romance with Carol Sopel, a striking woman who was involved in the theatrical world. Their connection seemed destined for greatness, as both were ambitious and immersed in the same glamorous circles. Yet, as with many relationships in the world of fame and success, their bond was tested by the pressures of their careers. The demands of being constantly on the move, coupled with the emotional strain of Connery's rising fame, created a rift between the two, ultimately leading to their heartbreaking breakup. The end of their relationship left Connery devastated, but it also fueled his desire to succeed in ways he hadn't fully understood before. A major obstacle in their relationship had been Sopel's family, who were deeply disapproving of Connery. She came from a Jewish background, and her family saw Connery as an outsider, someone unsuitable for their daughter. The pressure of these external forces weighed heavily on the relationship. Despite their intense affection for each other, the Yawish couple could not overcome the intense familial opposition. Sopel's family made it clear that they did not approve of Connery and urged her to stay away from him. This tension, combined with the strains of Connery's burgeoning career, eventually caused the relationship to implode. The heartbreak from the breakup left Connery feeling more guarded and cautious when it came to love. He began to close himself off emotionally, uncertain of how much he could invest in any future relationship, given the painful lessons learned from his first love. Despite the challenges Sean Connery faced growing up, his life took an unexpected and fateful turn one night in Edinburgh that would later become the stuff of local legend. It was at a pool hall when a group of thugs from the notorious Valder gang, feared for their violent dominance in the area, attempted to steal his jacket. Connery, never one to back down from a confrontation, refused to hand over his property. What began as a minor scuffle quickly escalated, and before long, 6 members of the gang were following him through the dark streets of the city. Alone, vastly outnumbered, and faced with the very real prospect of violence, Connery did not flee. Instead, he made a split-second decision to fight. In what was later retold as a story of incredible bravery, Connery faced down all 6 men. With sheer strength, courage, and a relentless will, he fought them off, one by one, until he was the last man standing. Word of his victory spread quickly, and from that moment on, Connery was no longer just another tough kid from the rough streets. He had become a figure of respect and admiration, even among the hardest of men. Despite the street brawls and the physicality that marked much of his early life, Connery's true ambitions lay elsewhere. He knew that his path in life would be determined by more than just his brawn. His heart was set on acting. Between odd jobs and working hard to survive, he committed himself to studying the craft. He read plays, watched performances, and took acting lessons, striving to refine his skills and prove that he was more than just a physical presence. Knowing that his thick Scottish accent might hinder his prospects, Connery enrolled in elocution lessons to soften his brogue. This was a difficult process, one that required patience and persistence. It took time for Connery to master a more versatile voice, one that could carry him beyond the limits of his regional background. During the 1950s, Connery threw himself into the hustle of the acting world. He took whatever roles came his way, no matter how small or insignificant they might seem. From minor theater parts to background television roles, Connery worked tirelessly to build his reputation. He also took on bit parts in low-budget films, playing blue-collar characters such as truck drivers, laborers, and tough boxers, roles that played to his strengths but also allowed him to hone his craft. These small roles were important stepping stones, giving Connery exposure and helping to establish him as a reliable, charismatic presence on screen. His big break came when he was cast opposite the legendary Hollywood star Lana Turner in the sci-fi film, Another Time, Another Place. It was a significant milestone in Connery's career, as it marked his first major film production. Yet, even on the set of a major film, Connery's life was far from simple. Behind the scenes, tension simmered. As Turner's boyfriend, the notorious gangster Johnny Stompanato, grew increasingly jealous of Connery's close proximity to the actress. Believing that there was more than just a professional relationship between the two, Stompanato made his way to London, determined to confront Connery. When he arrived on set, the situation quickly escalated into a full-blown confrontation. Stompanato, enraged and armed with a gun, confronted Connery. In a swift and calm reaction, Connery disarmed the gangster and knocked him out cold. The incident was quickly dealt with Scotland Yard intervening and escorting Stompanato out of the country. The message was clear. Connery was not a man to be intimidated. Despite his growing fame and increasing recognition, Connery's relationships were often troubled. His romance with photographer Julie Hamilton was a perfect example of the complexity of his personal life. Initially, Hamilton found Connery off-putting, admitting later that she had thought him appalling when they first met. But Connery, determined to win her heart, pursued her relentlessly. In time, he won her over, and the two began living together in a modest London flat. During their time together, Hamilton supported Connery through his early struggles, helping him navigate the difficult years as he worked to establish himself as a serious actor. However, their relationship faced its own set of challenges when Hamilton was diagnosed with tuberculosis in 1960, a diagnosis that threatened her life. As the news of her illness broke, Connery faced a difficult decision. At the same time, he was offered a major role in the epic film El Cid. It was an opportunity that could have launched his career to even greater heights, but Connery made the selfless choice to turn it down. He chose to stay by Hamilton's side and care for her through her illness. This decision was a testament to his loyalty and his willingness to sacrifice his own career for someone he loved. Thankfully, Hamilton recovered, and Connery was later given a second chance to take on the role. Though Connery's dedication to Hamilton was clear, The relationship ultimately unraveled. One night, while lying in bed, Connery casually remarked on the incredible eyes of actress Diane Cilento, with whom he was working at the time. Hamilton immediately sensed that something was amiss, and when confronted, Connery admitted that his feelings for her had faded. The breakup was swift and final, leaving both parties heartbroken. However, years later, when Connery crossed paths with Hamilton again, there was a surprising twist. By that time, Hamilton had married and had a child, a son she named Jason, in honor of Connery and the support he had given her. Connery was touched by this gesture, and in a full-circle moment, he later named his own son Jason. Falling for Diane Cilento, though, proved to have even greater consequences. Cilento was still married when their affair began, and although their relationship was full of challenges, it also opened up new doors for Connery. Cilento introduced him to producer Harry Saltzman, who was working on the adaptation of Ian Fleming's James Bond novels. Although it wasn't an easy road to the role, Connery ultimately won over the producers. Initially, they had wanted Cary Grant for the role of Bond, but the legendary actor would only commit to one film. After a failed casting call, the producers reconsidered Connery, and he seized the opportunity. At his audition, Connery made a lasting impression by wearing wrinkled clothes and exuding an unapologetic swagger, an attitude that was exactly what the role of Bond required. The producers saw in him a raw confidence and charisma that could define the iconic spy. Once cast as Bond, Connery underwent rigorous training to refine his image and polish his accent. The transformation was vital, as the character of Bond needed to be suave, clever, and impossibly cool. His now famous line, "Bond, James Bond," delivered with calm assurance, became one of the most iconic moments in cinematic history. Dr. No was a massive success, and Connery's role in the film catapulted him to international fame. However, the success of Dr. No also created new complications in his personal life. Cilento, who had finalized her divorce just before the film's premiere, became pregnant with Connery's child, and the two decided to marry in secret. Their wedding in Gibraltar, although fraught with complications due to political tensions and passport issues, marked the beginning of a new chapter in Connery's life. Despite their brief reunion on the set of Thunderball, it was clear that Sean Connery and Diane Cilento's marriage was beyond repair. The emotional rift between the couple had deepened, and crew members recall hearing loud, heated arguments between them while filming. When the cameras stopped rolling, their troubles only worsened. Connery had become an international sensation, the face of the James Bond franchise, while Cilento's career had stagnated. The stark contrast in their professional success created tension, breeding resentment and insecurity. Though they tried to maintain their marriage for the sake of their children, it was clear that the relationship was on its last legs. By the mid-1960s, Connery's success had reached new heights, and he began to leverage his star power to break free from the Bond image. He managed to secure a role in Alfred Hitchcock's Marnie, marking a stark departure from the suave spy persona he had become synonymous with. With only 2 more Bond films left on his contract, Connery began to envision a future beyond the tuxedo and shaken martinis. He hoped that his role in Marnie would be the beginning of his reinvention as a serious actor. However, like a plot twist in a Bond film, just as he thought he was free from 007's grasp, the franchise pulled him back in. Connery had always been known for performing many of his own stunts, long before Tom Cruise made it a trademark. During Thunderball, however, his commitment to realism nearly proved fatal. In one of the film's most famous sequences, Connery had to swim through a tank filled with live sharks. He was immediately uneasy about the idea, but the crew had designed a plexiglass partition to separate him from the sharks. However, poor planning meant the partition wasn't long enough, and one of the sharks managed to slip through the gap. Connery, realizing the danger, scrambled out of the tank in a panic, narrowly avoiding what could have been a deadly accident. This close call on set would become one of the many intense and memorable moments of his Bond tenure. By the late 1960s, Connery found himself at a crossroads. Despite his immense fame, the James Bond films had begun to weigh heavily on him. He was no longer just the suave secret agent. He was in many ways trapped by the role that had defined him. During the production of You Only Live Twice, Connery made it clear to producers that he was done with Bond. They soon began searching for a replacement, and the dissolution of his marriage to Cilento followed shortly thereafter. By February 1971, the couple had officially separated, marking the end of their tumultuous relationship. Connery wasted little time moving on. In the years following his separation from Cilento, he had a few relationships, but it wasn't until he met French-Moroccan painter Micheline Roquebrune that he truly found his match. The two were initially both married when they first crossed paths, and their relationship simmered in the background until both finalized their divorces. Once free to pursue their connection, they quickly became inseparable. The press followed, their every move speculating about a wedding. Connery, ever the master of controlling his public image, concocted a clever ruse, telling reporters in March 1975 that they had secretly married 4 months earlier, a complete fabrication. In truth, their quiet ceremony took place 2 months later, far away from the prying eyes of the media. Meanwhile, the Bond franchise faced a critical crisis. After Connery's departure, George Lazenby took over the role of Bond, signing a 7-film contract. However, Lazenby's portrayal in On Her Majesty's Secret Service was met with lukewarm reception, and he walked away after just 1 film. With the producers desperate to bring back the iconic 007, Connery surprised everyone by agreeing to return for Diamonds Are Forever in 1971. His decision was not fueled by nostalgia or sentiment, but by financial negotiation. Connery secured an enormous payday for his return and demanded the right to choose 2 future films after the Bond series was over. The studio agreed, and Connery made good use of his newfound leverage. Part of his salary went toward establishing a charitable trust to support young Scottish artists, giving back to the community that had shaped him. Despite the challenges and frustrations of his life after Bond, Connery's career would soon take another unexpected turn. In 1974, he agreed to star in the bizarre science fiction film Zardoz. This film is best remembered for Connery's now infamous costume, which featured a red mankini-style outfit with thigh-high boots, paired with his distinctive ponytail. The film baffled audiences and critics alike, but Connery's decision to take on the role was driven by more than eccentricity. Director John Boorman revealed that Connery had been struggling to find meaningful roles after stepping away from the Bond franchise, and Zardoz was one of the few films offering him a leading role. Though it was panned upon release, the film later developed a cult following, appreciated by niche audiences for its strange, philosophical themes. By the 1980s, Connery's status as a screen legend was undeniable. Despite the frustration he had felt in distancing himself from Bond, his body of work had established him as one of Hollywood's most respected actors. In 1983, he made a surprising return to the role of James Bond in Never Say Never Again, a rival Bond film that was not produced by Eon Productions. The film's title itself was a tongue-in-cheek reference to Connery's earlier declaration that he would never play Bond again. However, the production proved to be a nightmare. Connery clashed with the inexperienced producer, took over many of the film's production aspects, and even broke his wrist during fight scenes. Connery's micromanaging of the film, including handpicking screenwriters and pushing for rewrites, created a highly stressful environment. Despite the film's modest success, Connery decided that this would be his final time playing 007, marking a true never-again decision. In 1993, Connery's personal life made headlines once more. Singer-songwriter Lindsay DePaul claimed to have had an affair with him in 1989, even while Connery's wife, Micheline, was present. DePaul described the affair as one of the biggest mistakes of her life, as Connery abruptly ended the relationship after 5 months. Connery denied the affair, and Micheline never publicly commented, choosing instead to stand by her husband through the controversy. Connery's career continued through the late 90s and early 2000s, with notable roles in films such as The Rock, Entrapment, and Finding Forrester. However, the 2003 film The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen marked a turning point in his career. The production was plagued by issues, including a contentious relationship between Connery and director Stephen Norrington. The two clashed on nearly every aspect of the film, and Connery later criticized Norrington's direction in interviews. When asked about the director's whereabouts during the film's release party, Connery quipped that he was probably in the local asylum. After this difficult experience, Connery quietly stepped away from acting, signaling the end of his illustrious career. In 2006, Connery's past came back to haunt him when his ex-wife, Diane Cilento, released her autobiography, in which she accused him of physical and emotional abuse during their marriage. Though Connery denied the allegations, the damage was done. Journalists unearthed a controversial quote from a 1965 interview where Connery stated that he did not think there was anything particularly wrong with hitting a woman, though he did not recommend it. Despite attempts to distance himself from the quote in later years, it cast a shadow over his legacy, and for many, it tainted the image of the once immaculate Bond. On October 31st, 2020, the world lost Sean Connery at the age of 90. His death, announced by his family and the James Bond production company, marked the end of an era. Despite the controversies, career missteps, and personal struggles, Connery remained one of cinema's most enduring icons. A working-class Scotsman who had transformed into a global symbol of masculinity, sophistication, and movie star charisma, Connery left an indelible mark on the film industry, forever remembered as the man who first brought James Bond to life.